outcome remains uncertain. The Conservatives are on course to be the biggest party, but without an overall majority. Jeremy Corbyn called on Theresa May to resign as Prime Minister. But Mrs May, re-elected in Maidenhead, said the country needed a period of stability and that the Conservative Party would ensure that. Tom Bateman has the latest.
She called this election early, a political gamble, the hope that she would transform the Tories' fragile advantage in Parliament with a huge win. But the smiles of the campaign trail have vanished. Forecasts suggest the Conservatives may end up even worse off without even a majority.
If, as the indications have shown, if this is correct, that the Conservative Party has won the most seats and probably the most votes, then it will be incumbent on us to ensure that we have that period of stability, and that is exactly what we will do.
And you can see what the Labour leader makes of these results so far. A man whose campaign confounded many expectations, beaming smiles, with Labour on course for a far better night than many thought.
The Prime Minister called the election because she wanted a mandate. Well, the mandate she's got is lost Conservative seats, lost votes, lost support and lost confidence. I would have thought that's enough to go, actually, and make way for a government that will be truly representative of all of the people of this country.
Cordova is duly elected.
In Battersea, Labour have ousted a government minister on a swing of 10%. There have been Labour gains elsewhere, in Stockton South from the Conservatives and in Scotland, Rutherglen from the SNP. Senior figures already appear delighted.
Theresa May's authority has been undermined by this election. She is a damaged Prime Minister whose reputation may never recover.
And just look at the mood in Hastings, hardly beaming confidence, where the Home Secretary is defending her seat.
So I'm just quietly waiting and we keep an eye on everybody and everything in the normal way.
Labour Party, 21,000.
It's not just the Tories suffering. In Sheffield, the Lib Dems' former leader Nick Clegg has lost his seat. The night began with a big projection, the exit poll, studied closely by all the politicians, but remember it's still just a forecast. It had the Conservatives as the largest party, but short of an overall majority. The Tories would have 314 seats, down 17 on 2 years ago. It puts Labour on 266 seats, up 34. The SNP would get 34 seats and the Lib Dems 14.
And it was right to go to the country and to ask them the question about what their views were, what people's views were about the direction that they wanted for the future.
But there is some encouraging news for the Conservatives in Scotland. They've taken the seat of the SNP's deputy leader, Angus Robertson. The Festival of Democracy has been on full show, as have the upsets, ministers under threat, senior SNP figures gone, UKIP's vote collapsing in many places. Theresa May has left her constituency count. The election campaign has been an unpredictable journey for her. Already, some Labour opponents are saying tonight should bring the end of the road for her premiership. But remember, there's still a way to go and more votes still to be counted. Tom Bateman, BBC News.
Well, the projected result of the vote has seen the pound weaken on the currency markets. Let's get the latest reaction now from Sharanjit Lail, who's in Singapore for us. Sharanjit, tell us more.
Well, that's right. As you said, the most immediate reaction on the markets has been from the British pound sterling falling nearly 2% against the US dollar after that exit poll suggested the Conservative Party could lose its parliamentary majority. Though the good news, though, is that it continues to hold around the $1.27 mark against the US dollar. It hasn't fallen any further thus far. And analysts I've been speaking to have been saying that it's likely the pound will continue weak through the day because these early results suggest no clear winner. And given the political uncertainty that brings, the Brexit process, of course, could be complicated further. And that is an uncertainty that markets and investors don't like. But having said that, though, most Asian markets at the moment are trading higher. We're seeing Japan's Nikkei up almost 1%. The Chinese markets are higher, Australian and Hong Kong markets fairly flat. So there's no clear direction here on how Asia is reacting to those election results.
Sharanjit, many thanks. And now back to David Dimbleby.
This is coverage from the BBC
Welcome
in
back
London.
to the election centre. Indeed, welcome back to the House of Commons, where we're now forecasting 318 for the Conservatives, short of the overall majority of 326. Labour on 267. The Conservatives, the largest party. There are many, many stories to be told tonight about what's happened, and Emily has now a list of seats that have changed hands, which we haven't yet caught up with. Emily.
Labour's having a very good night in England. This is Leeds North West, which Labour has taken from the Lib Dems on 44% share of the vote. They needed a 3.4% swing to take this one, and they've doubled that, nearly an 8-point swing towards Labour from the Lib Dems. Greg Mulholland is out here. Let me take you to Lincoln. This is the oldest constituency seat in the entire country, founded in 1263, and it is a Labour gain from the Conservatives. It's been pretty much a bellwether since, the October election of 74, but Karen Lee has now replaced Carl McCartney. You can have a look at this change overnight, which pushes Labour up 8 points at the expense of UKIP down 10. They got double the swing here as well. They needed 1.5 and they've got a 3% swing. Weaver Vale, another one, number 11 on the Labour target list, and it was a tiny majority of 806, but the Labour Party's on 52 now, and if you want to see what that looks like as a swing, nearly 5%. Tony Blair won here for Labour 3 times, but Graham Evans is out now, Mike Amesbury is out. Some good news, however, from the Conservatives in Scotland, and I'm going to show you 3 seats that they've taken from the SNP: Aberdeenshire West, Stirling and Berwickshire, which borders the one that they already had before this election. And you can see these tremendous swings now away from the SNP towards the Conservatives of 14%, 11% and 11%. Everything's been up in the air, really, since 2015, when the SNP were coming in with some of those humongous swings of over 20, 30%. So to take any of these seats back needed really solid swings. Party. And you can see the kind of work that they're doing. One more, I'll just end with this. Edinburgh West, which has been gained by the Lib Dems, who are having a mixed night, but certainly a better night in Scotland. Lib Dems taking this from the SNP in Edinburgh West, Lib Dems then, on 34%, a swing there of 5.8%. On the back of these results, what you can say is the one Tory who's having an excellent night is Ruth Davidson.
We're joined now by Jacob Rees-Mogg, or at least I hope we are. Yes, Mr. Rees-Mogg. I don't know where you are. Are you in Somerset or are you in Bristol? Are you in Taunton? Where are you?
I'm in Somerset. I'm in Bath. No, I'm in Bath. I'm in Bath University.
Ah, I see. Right, good. Well, and you held your seat?
I have, yes.
Good. And
we'll break away from the BBC live coverage now, and we'll go to our own coverage here at WBM Radio. This is the latest count from the BBC, slightly 10, let's see, almost 15 after 4. This is the forecast here again from the BBC. The Labour Party has picked up, according to this forecast model, stands now at 223 votes. The Conservatives are down 10. Labour is up 5. The Scottish Independence Party is down 18. The Lib Dems have 10. And the party aligned with DJ Trump in the U.S., the Brexit party, if you want to call it that, picked up, I believe, 0 seats tonight. Let me just look at this. This is from exit polling, which is a little bit more accurate, at least it has been in the past, with the exception of the race involving the former British Prime Minister John Major. But it's predicting 318 seats for the Tories, and it's down 13, and 267, that's up 35 for Labour. Now this is from the BBC, and this changes various constituencies coming in here. Let's go, back to this. The Greens have one party, and the UK Independent Party has none, period. That was a party of Brexit, and they are not doing well tonight at all. Let me just go to some of the newspapers here in London, and we'll start with the Guardian. We're headed to what's called a hung parliament. There are 650 constituencies within the UK. And the idea of this so-called snap, very quick election, they have that in the UK, called by the PM Theresa May, was to consolidate her power. And the various newspapers, pundits from the monopoly media in the UK did not give the Labour Party a chance under Jeremy Corbyn. But Labour has pulled off a surprise, as one would say here, and they are in a position today to deny the Tories a majority in the Parliament, and it will leave many things up in the air. Now, the full results here so far, Labour is at 201 seats, and the Tories at 190, a gain of 24 for Labour. And Labour lost 2, the Tories have lost 20. The Scottish National Party, 29 seats, they have lost 14 seats. They are down 13. Now, various, the Lib Dems, let's see where they are. They have 9 seats. They gained 6, they lost 2, a net of 4. Sinn Féin, that would be in the north of Ireland. They have 6 seats and a gain of 2, a net of 2 there. So this is from the Guardian here, and we'll now, let's see, we'll go over to the Independent and get their views here on some of our outlets. You will, let me just move on here. This is from the Telegraph. They have called upon Theresa May to just go, literally. And the former Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne, he was sacked by May, said if the exit poll is correct, she would not survive. In other words, the Tories will ask May to leave. And that will be the end of that saga with Theresa May. What is more and more showing up here, the number of attacks in the UK. The pound sterling is down 2%. It fell, let's see, 1.5%. I think now it's down 2%. That would be at $1.27 is what it would be worth as of now there. Of course, Corbyn was elected himself, Jeremy Corbyn, for the 9th time there. And Google Trends, this is something from them. This is a few hours ago, showed in the past searches for political parties in the UK. 29% for the DPU, 21% for Labour, and only 12% for the Tories. So it tells you where things are going here, period. This represents a big change from early on election day. Labour had notched up 45% of the searches, the Conservatives 22%, and the DU had 10% there. One possible other right-leaning MPs, such as those from the DU, let's see, that is one of the conservative parties there in the UK. And we'll come back later here on, this is Democratic Unionist Party in Northern Ireland. A little different situation there. Suggesting a hung parliament. Now this would be one of the Democratic Unionist parties, one of the conservative-type parties in the event of a hung parliament here, which there will be. So what is happening so far tonight, this is a big night for the Labour Party, and it is a big night for progressives in the UK, period. If you recall, there was, after the last election, there were calls, and prior to that, there were calls for Jeremy Corbyn to be vanished from the Labour Party. He fought it out, remained the leader of Labour, and Labour itself some machinations. What this goes to show is that if you run a people-based campaign, in other words, a working-type campaign, his campaign, very similar to Bernie Sanders. Obviously, the Labour Party in the UK is much more politically advanced than what we would have in the US, period. But at the same time, they have in that plank a very well-written plank. We'll talk more of that tonight in our second update, which will probably be in a couple of 2 or 3 hours here. It's after 4, it's around 4:20, 4:25 in the UK. Now it's 11:25 here in the East. So we'll have more updates there, and also we'll have that Friday Jobber, our political program, magazine program, that will be on later tonight. We'll cover the latest from the election, but also the latest machinations from the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. The former FBI director testified today there. Comey basically called DJ Trump a liar, but the deal here is in that whole line of testimony, you have what would be obstruction of justice, which is a legal standard. That in itself is a very, what we'd say in the U.S., an iffy deal. But the political damage to DJ Trump, his polling numbers are down in the high 30s, and we'll see where DJ Trump goes from there. Let me go to the Independent here. This is called, from the Independent, what is happening is possibly one of the biggest upsets in UK political history. That is from the Independent. The final exit polls stunned the country, no doubt about that. May was looking and reading. She called us the snap poll election that she wanted to pick up additional seats to have a mandate. Now she's dealing with a DJ Trump type mandate, and in the UK parliamentary system is a little different from his mandate. She could literally disappear because in the UK you run by members that are elected to parliament and not by the leader. So more than likely, if things hold up tonight, the Tories will get a different leader. Cameron left, she will leave, and period. Now, to this Brexit thing, the referendum, the Leave people won by 52% of the vote, was a huge upset. The Remain people were there, but the Remain, and the polls that had to Remain, incidentally, Remain were the people wanted to remain in the EU. So it's a situation that these were the polls, not the exit poll. More from Independents by 34 seats. We had been looking at this and at the polling in the UK. There was a spread there from literally a 1% there to about 12%. So this is a close election. The exit polls have the Tories at 314. From what we're seeing, they could fall below that, and Labour at 266 there, but not certain as to where this go. And this is from the Independent. Is the exit polls and how they fared in the last election. The exit polls came close to predicting the winners, and relatively, we talked about that before, exception 1992. John Major, a long time ago there. The exit polling is much better today, period. The Prime Minister sat to win. Well, we already talked about that. The pound has fallen by 2% at this time. So, whereas it was 1.5, now it is 2%. You'll hear this on most of our outlets, and we'll attempt to get this up on our other outlets, and we'll see where we are going with this. Let's go back to the BBC to wrap this up, at least this part of our coverage.
Tell us about your view of what's happened. Was the Prime Minister guilty of hubris by running for this election when she said she wasn't going to, and is the result a disaster for the Conservative Party?
No, I think neither of those things is true. I think an election was going to be inevitable, both as a result of the Brexit vote a year ago and of having a new Prime Minister, that a new Prime Minister required a mandate ultimately, and it was merely a question of time. As for the Conservative Party, we seem to be starting out today where we finished before the last Parliament was dissolved. So there isn't much change, but there's some rotation, and I think that will probably mean that we continue to form the government. So it's not a disaster, but it's not as good as it could have been.
It's quite strange to say you're back where you were before this election, when you did have a majority of 17 before the election. You now don't have a majority, it seems.
Well, we haven't had all the seats in yet, but it's not an enormous change. It's within the margin of error at the moment.
She said she wanted to guarantee certainty and stability for the years ahead. Does this guarantee certainty and stability for more than a couple of months, perhaps?
Well, the British people have decided on the Parliament that they want, and that's their right to do so and to be governed according to their democratic will. And the certainty and security of the British Constitution is, I think, very great over many hundreds of years. And indeed, the certainty and security of the BBC reporting of it. I congratulate you on your 10th successive edition of Election Night. You may have an 11th in October to come, but time will tell.
What do you think, leaving that aside for a moment, what do you think the Prime Minister should do about the Brexit negotiations which are due to start, as we know, in 11 days' time? Can it be pursued as though nothing had happened?
Well, the Prime Minister is the Prime Minister and is the person who will pursue these negotiations. The very straightforward fact is that we leave the European Union at the end of March 2019 and that the negotiations are a prelude to that, but they're not necessary for that. We leave at the end of March 2019 whether we've had any negotiations or not. That is now part of both our law and of the European treaties.
Do you think there'll be opposition in the parliamentary party now? Some people, obviously, I mean, maybe not you because you're a loyal supporter of the Prime Minister, but there will be people in the Conservative Party who feel this was a terrible error to have this election and that it's done the party terrible damage and that she really should take the blame for it because it was her decision, as we know, walking on the hills of Wales that led you to where you are tonight.
But I think the thing to remember is that George Osborne is no longer a member of the Parliamentary Party. He stood down from his seat in Tatton, and though he may throw rocks from the Evening Standard, he's not in the House of Commons to call.
We are still live. Let me just check one thing here. This is one of the drawbacks when you are live. Okay, we are still live here, and what had happened, we lost our feed from the BBC. Momentarily, we shall return. Just a second here. And we are working on getting that feed back from the BBC. And in a second here. To recap the mandate that Theresa May had forecast by calling the snap election has not materialized tonight is one of the differences that primarily in a parliamentary type of system as opposed to a system as in the U.S. Things can happen very quickly, and many times it does not happen in the manner in which one would assume that it would actually happen. And this is what has happened in the UK. That the headline, of course, is the BBC, the Tories fall short. They have indeed fallen short, and what implications this will have for other right-wing regimes in various countries, particularly in the U.S. There, because it was a prologue to the Brexit vote there, the emphasis on the working class, the parallels between the working class that they target in the UK and the voters that were targeted in the US by DJ Trump. And obviously it did not hold in the UK, which is obviously a little different kind of situation set up there than what we have in the U.S. But at the same time, we have falling polling numbers here. And had it been a situation here where there were numerous attacks and a president called an election, or the representatives of his party were running, and it was a failure. And what happened in the UK? It was a failure in part because the party cut the number of law enforcement, cut the numbers of law enforcement personnel. So this in itself brought about a very interesting dynamic there in the UK. We are still working on getting things straightened out here. We're having a little bit of technical difficulty, but we will be able to work past that, and because we had so many things going on at once on a single workstation, so we now move to a different workstation, which will alleviate this problem when we do live coverage, and from many different sources, as what we are attempting to do tonight. What we'll do now is, to make things shorter, we'll close out our live coverage here, and we will return later tonight as soon as we can get things straight here. But you are hearing live coverage now from us. Via Spreaker, and hopefully we'll be able to get that back, and we do have it back now. Nonetheless, this will do it for us. We'll see you on the Friday Jobber on many of these stations. This is Boston Red from WBRN Radio in Boston and on the Boston Red Network. Good evening.